Hello everybody, I'm Ard, and welcome to another episode of Minecraft Enigmatica 2 Expert. Last episode, I said we were going to finally get around to working on a reactor, and so we should probably get started on more power generation. Except, I'm not going to make a reactor. I'm going to do something a little more interesting, a little bit more off menu, and it has to do with this little guy on my shoulder here. We're actually going to go make some hamster wheels, and we're going to go put this little guy to work. So let's talk a little bit about how the hamster wheel works. The first thing you need to do is make some hamster food. It's just any 3 seeds together to make a pile of food. And this is what you can feed to your hamster to make them happy, to tame them, to heal up their health. You need them happy or they will not use the hamster wheel. The next thing you need to do with the food is load it up into the wheel. It can take up to 16. Then you pick up your hamster with shift right click, and then shift right click him into the wheel and pray that he actually goes in, which he's not, because he's hungry. As long as your hamster's not hungry, he will go into the hamster wheel and start running around. When he does, it starts generating power. It generates about 200 RF a tick, which is 5 times what it normally generates, I believe. I think it's normally 40, which is not an insignificant amount for the relatively low cost it takes to run these things. You can pipe power out of it as per the norm straight into a battery, and you can pipe food directly into the hamster wheel, and it holds up to 16. So this is all relatively easy to do and actually pretty easy to set up in the very early game. The hardest part is getting more hamsters, and you can find them on Arctic type coasts just running around, just like I found the initial couple I found, which will get you a relatively small amount of power relatively early game for very little cost, and I highly recommend doing that. But what if I told you there's an easier way? So here I am in my mob farm with everything turned off and disabled, so nothing's spawning in here. And here I am standing next to my Mob Duplicator that normally spawns dragons. And here I am holding a mob imprisonment tool with a hamster in it. I think you all know what comes next. And now we have hamsters at the industrial scale. So let's maybe go set up another Mob Duplicator in my workroom. Alright, so I've got my work area set up in a very basic fashion right now. I've got the Mob Duplicator hooked up to the energy cube, which has some residual power left over, but it's all drained into the cube in the crafter right now. The crafter is drawing some barley from this ender chest that is coming in one at a time from my pipe that's providing materials to my ore manufacturing stuff. And then the crafter is making the hamster food. So the next step is to wire up some of this to show you how I intend to proceed. As I mentioned, you do need to feed the hamsters first to make them happy and to heal them up and to make them well fed before you can actually put them in the wheels. Okay, so I had to change my design a little bit. I was originally going to run the cables along the sides of the hamster wheels, but for some reason it wasn't actually able to extract power from the sides. I was able to put the seeds in, but not extract them. So we're just going to have to put it in through the top instead, unfortunately, which that works fine. Anyhow, can you see where I'm going with this yet? If not, well, how about now? Got an idea where this is going? So I may be going a bit far on this, and since I'm already starting to see some lag, this might be a bust, but we're going to keep going. So to explain what I'm actually doing here, there are 8 rows of 13 hamster wheels in that grid. It means there's 104 total, and they're producing 200 RF a piece, which means they're producing over 20,000 RF per grid of this. If I can fill up almost this whole box with it, it'll be producing about 3 times as much as my Internanium turbine for seeds. So this could get pretty silly, but I'm already seeing some lag, so this might be a bust. I've already had to swap out the seeds that were coming in from outside for a cloche with melons to produce more seeds faster. I may need to build that out to be wider or put an actual farm in here to produce seeds even faster, but we will cross that bridge as it comes up. Anyhow, back to the grind. Alright, time for some unpleasant lessons learned. So if you set one of these up, make absolutely certain your food production is keeping enough to keep these wheels going, because if they pop out, you've got to destroy a whole set of rows that you've just created to put them back in, and more importantly, you might lose some of them. Also, if they've popped out, the Mob Duplicator won't run because you can only have 32 mobs out from it at a time, which that's not really a surprise. But that also means apparently when they're in the wheels, they don't count as entities, which is actually probably a good sign for lag long term other than the constant animation here. So that's at least decent. So I guess let me bulk out my food generation some. I probably should replace these cloches with an actual farm maybe. That would actually go faster. I don't know. I need to figure something out. This is not going as well as I would hope. I figured the food would be the easiest part of this and not one of the harder parts. Okay, so I think I've straightened this out a little bit. It looks like it's about 3 cloches per column of hamster wheels up here. So I'm gonna lose more space than I thought just providing the seeds, but the melons are actually getting the job done now. This is without fertilizer, by the way. If I pump fertilizer in here, it might actually go faster. There's also one thing I didn't show you, because that makes setup of something like this a lot easier. If you're going to do something like this with Ender IO conduits, one of the things you absolutely want to bring is the conduit probe. And you might see that it has this normal mode where you can click on it and it pops up what all the cables are currently doing, or you can get power information, stuff like that. What's less obvious is there is an alternate mode. You can go to copy paste mode, which is normally bound to Y. See how it changed color to yellow? And then you can shift right click on an existing connector and then just right click it on all of the other ones to change it to what you want it to match all of the rest. So this makes it a lot less tedious to actually set up all of the connections because I've modified these pretty heavily. Alright, so we've got 4 rows in now, and that's about 80,000 power, about the same amount as my Endurnium turbine. But you gotta admit, this is so much more interesting and funny. Plus I had to build out a bunch more cloches and a bunch more melons, and it's only going to get worse. And I'm starting to run out of space, and I'm starting to wonder how far I should go with this. I guess let's go find out, huh? Alright, and finished. 10 walls full of these hamsters. We pop up here, you can see all the way through, and you can see them all running the wheels in a row. But something feels like it's missing here. There we go, that should keep them working. Anyhow, sorry for the claustrophobia, but let's do some real talk here because there's some things I do not have answers to here. So, and I'm hoping some of the community here can solve that. So, my first problem is I don't know if my Ender IO power cables can actually transmit all the power from all of these wheels. Does anybody know if they treat these the same as other power cables where it's each individual machine attached to it is treated separately so it can pull all of the power out of each of these at full draw without overloading the cables, or does it do a max capacity on them? Second one is, I don't know if I can punch all of this power out of this compact machine, because I don't know how much the tunnels can allow for. I attach it to an energy cell on the outside, and it seemed to be filling up pretty slow, despite the fact that this should now be a significant amount of power. So maybe I can punch it out through multiple tunnels, but I don't know what the draw is. I'm also down the hole where like even the resonant flux ducts right there aren't enough to transmit all of this power. I'm gonna have to go up to cryo-stabilized probably to handle this much long term. And speaking of how much, well, there are 98 hamster wheels in each wall here, and there's 10 walls. So there's 980 total at 200 RF a tick, which means we're generating 196,000 RF out of this grid. So not quite 3 times my ethylene generator, but still a massive boost over it. There's a lot of work, and the cloches do seem to map about 3 cloches of melons per wall here, so it's kind of hard to show the array now with all of this, but you can see how I've got it laid out sort of. There's a bunch in here. Anyhow, let's get away from that big pile of claustrophobia. And, you know, we went a little bit off menu, but now we have significantly more power, and I can actually upgrade things like my Void Miner in the future. So things got a little weird, but here we are. Turns out hamsters are indeed endgame power and produce quite a bit if you're willing to go through the effort. And I'm not gonna lie, that was hours of work and pretty tedious, guys. Like there's no real shortcuts. You have to manually load each hamster into those wheels, and yeah. But it was a fun project, and I actually enjoyed doing it. So that's a plus, right? Been meaning to do this since almost the first episode. Anyhow, as always, I'm Ard. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.